I guess I'm kind of interested in term of getting to know each other that and through this medium and also through what we have, the tools that we have is language. So I'm curious to hear what you think about does language or the morphing of meaning find a place in your work?
Well, I think in one project, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is in my work, The Island of the Colorblind is a
Mm,
project about the meaning of color and perception of color vision, and that in the absence of a certain color vision, it actually, instead of limiting your view or your vision of the world, it opens up, is like an invitation to open up to the diversity of seeing and to rediscover conditioned notion of color by, yeah, literally trying to rediscover it or to give it new, redefine it.
mm,
So I think in that sense, the idea was very much at what if color is just a word, but it has no meaning, or it doesn't have the meaning that we are brought up with. Since if you've
mm,
never seen it, it only exists in language and in other people's eye, rather than perhaps in your own reality. Or the question would then be, how do you perceive and experience color as a non-color seeing person? I experience that a lot of use of language or the way you speak about other people changes.
yeah.
And even if at that point, maybe when you're speaking about it, you don't hear a lot of people being aware of their choice of words, but then as it consciousness grows, it becomes almost, yeah, it becomes accepted or acknowledged to use different words, and they become the only available words.
Yeah, wow, that's really interesting to think about, you know, um, colors as as artists. We think colors in in a certain way, but it is a language itself, and um, not being able to to see what is the condition of normal, right?
Mm.
I'm going to air quote that what is normal seeing, and not because it's a process of translation, that what our eyes and our brains are translating. But I also, English is my second language. So I think about that a lot in the process of translation, how there's this um, that slippage in a different way because um, like a lot of English words would have maybe different meanings simultaneously that contradict one another. But then, so then the popular usage would think of it in one way, but then in fact, historically, the word actually is much more complicated. So I'm constantly surprised by language and constantly trying to figure out um, how to articulate, to speak to others, even within my family. Um, I think about to speak to my family about my work. Uh, that's like the process of translation is incredibly difficult because then I have to translate it not only in just in non-art terms, right? Non-technical, not like they don't, but then my shorthand, I cannot just go, oh, it's an installation with video. And it's
Mm.
like, what's an installation? Like there we don't even have a common ground, right? So I think that I'm always thinking about this what the way in which either language allow us to um, connect to one another. This is one of the way that we can, but during pandemic time is definitely we need that more than ever because we don't have the social interaction that can mitigate certain kind of uh, lack of common language, right? And I hope that we won't lose that, because that is a different kind of communication, but it's so lovely. It is so lovely because we just all of a sudden, both parties are not the dominant, right? The power structure is different.
Mm.
We're on this kind of same place of a common ground but we need to work together to understand one another.
Yeah, because definitely I think in a complicated conversation, or as you say, a conversation about work or art, that power structure really reveals itself. I also do feel limited by the fact that English is not my mother tongue, although I also start to feel that talking about my work in my mother tongue, in Flemish or Dutch, is also becoming increasingly difficult, because I have just mostly been speaking about my work in English, although I lack some of the vocabulary there. So but also, for example, you see that some conversations develop quicker in different parts of the world. Like when we were doing the lottery last time, it was actually the first time that I was ever asked to present myself with a pronoun. And I didn't fully understand, like, I think you chose they, but no
Yeah.
one ever explained to me what that means. And
Mm.
today I read an article, and it was also about an artist who also prefers to be referred to as they. But then it was a Dutch article. They said, well, but in Dutch it doesn't really translate well. It's confusing. So in this particular case, we will stick to she. I don't know if it was deflecting from actually using it the way maybe the artist would have wanted, or if it's just that what also happens, that some things don't equally translate in different languages, or they have a different meaning on the side, which makes it more complicated to translate. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that using they, or for the people to accept using they, them pronoun in the English language, took a long time, because historically, grammatically, it is, as you say, it's incorrect. It's the multiple of others, right? That it has to be more than one, right? Group of people. So how can an individual be a multiple?
My boyfriend was right away, I'm definitely they. I could not just be one person.
Right? Exactly. So that's my argument or that's my kind of preface. If there's, and I have students or people in different part of the world, a different conversation, the local conversation about transness, right? LGBTQI conversation is different, and we have to respect that. Actually, I think it's super important to kind of understand that it's not American centric, right? We used to critique, let's say, the Eurocentricity of ideology and theory, and art also, discourse, right? But in terms of language, and in terms of the internet, and in terms of popular culture, the way in which certain kind of cultural norms is moving in a way in certain part of the world, that we all actually cannot take it as a given that the other side of the world is at the same pace, or they're beyond that. Like the indigenous people have always have a third sex, right? Third person. So they call it three spirits.
I think in Finnish there's also a different word still, and in Polynesian culture there's also a word to describe someone who is in between woman and man, and it's just it's like cultural heritage that has always been there. They just always had a word for it, and it was always part of their community and accepted.
Yes, and incredibly open, welcoming, rather than the gender binary, right? So the indigenous people of North America say it's three spirits, right? Which is so wonderful way of thinking about what is the self, and that is there's multiplicity.
But do you
But so I
think
guess
like
I'll segue back to they them just for this to for my choice. It is the one that, as I explained, as said, is the multiplicity that, and that I'm not bound by the rules of English grammar, that it made it very easy for me to actually accept it and use it for myself, but also for others, because I think that's application for others, for people in public to accept other people's pronoun as they, them, took a long time because it is grammatically incorrect, right? And for me, it's like, I like being grammatically incorrect. Because there's so many things of the kind of normacy that I'm not, right? I never feel quite fitted in the female, and never quite there with the male. So they, them allow me a certain kind of space to navigate, to kind of like to embrace this this openness and multiplicity of selves.
But as you say, what the Dutch article that I read today wrote, in English it is also grammatically incorrect.
Yes.
So it's not really, how to say, it's not really an excuse to then say, yeah, but in Dutch it doesn't translate well, because in English it also doesn't translate well, or it's also grammatically incorrect. Just say it like that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's a very early and continuing critique in the US, but I think that's have been number of years. But when it's first, trans people first come to advocate for different pronouns, because at one point also z, there also, that's kind of different altogether from they and them. So there's this kind of this tug of war, right? Of who's right or what is, but language is evolutionary,
For sure.
right? Different words, different, like again, different vocabulary changes over time, and how
There's just a few languages who still make up words in their own language for the new things, like Icelandic and French.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
example.
And
They still come up with
even
words for
popular
computer.
culture now, and popular culture making new language with all this acronym, right? So I think it's I think that change is important. Change is ultimately necessary for evolution and liberation.